And welcome back to Pokemon Team Videos. This one comes to us from Wade Wilson, who asked the age-old question, what is the Mad Titan Thanos' Pokemon team? Now, when I do a Pokemon team video, I like to look at all aspects of the character if I can. Their personality, their relationships, story elements, and obviously their abilities. With Thanos, that's actually kind of difficult, because Thanos being a cosmic-type being to some degree, he is an Eternal with a deviant gene. In essence, he is an Eternal, but a mutant at the same time, which is why he looks the way he does. He's much different than most characters that get thrown on this series. So it's a bit more difficult to figure out exactly where his team lines up, because there are facets of his personality which don't line up with any sort of Pokemon team whatsoever, and facets of his abilities which are just all over the place, because he can do just about anything. It's one of those. He's one of those characters that has such a vast array of abilities that to find Pokemon that fit those abilities would take forever. Fortunately, however, there is another way we can go with Thanos' Pokemon team. And I'm sure you figured it out even with just hearing the name Thanos. And that comes from the Infinity War saga, the Infinity Gauntlets, the everything that has to do with the Infinity Stones, because the Infinity Stones were a huge part of Thanos' character for the longest time. He is the character who went out to collect the Infinity Stones in the comics to create the Infinity Gauntlet, and that's where that whole comic series came from. Obviously, the Marvel movies are, paramount to the Infinity Stones. So, I thought about just doing straight Infinity Stone, but I'm like, okay, we can't just do straight Infinity Stones. That's not fair. So instead, I'm like, okay, the Infinity Stones are a good concept, but let's springboard past just the Infinity Stones. Let's see if we can get some Pokemon who not only represent Infinity Stones, but represent some aspect of Thanos' personality. So that is where we're basically getting this team derived from. So, first and foremost, which Infinity Stones are there that exist out there? What do they do? What do they represent? And what Pokemon do they choose to represent them? Plus the X factor of Thanos. Well, obviously you have the Space, Time, Mind, Power, Reality, and Soul Stone. Each represent an aspect of the universe corresponding to that name. The Power Stone represents all the power that has exist, will exist, and does exist in the Marvel Universe. The Reality Stone literally is also referred to as the Wish Stone because it alters reality to your will. The Soul Stone can collect trapped souls within its own pocket dimension, manipulate souls, manipulate life basically itself. You have the Space Stone, which represents basically spatial matter. You can actually move at like high frequency speeds without any interruption. You can create portals. You can basically cause yourself to be intangible because it's spatial awareness. It's manipulating matter more or less. You have the Mind Stone, which dominates the mental faculties of someone. You can gaze into someone's mind, read their mind, control their mind, depending on how much power you have with the other stones. And obviously, time is in and of itself time. It's speed up, rewind, pause, all that. Go back in time, time travel. You can do anything with those time stone that involves time, pretty much. It's really the limitations of the Infinity Stones are your imagination of what you do with them. So, with that being said, let's get into this now. And first up is our representation of the Power Stone. This one, I'm like, okay, there are plenty of Pokemon that can represent power. Absolutely. And big spoiler, there's only one non-legendary Pokemon on this team. And the reason for that is, when you're talking about power, legendaries are the top tier of the Pokemon universe. And when you're talking about the Infinity Stones, it made sense to include that. Specifically, when you factor in what the Infinity Stones each do, it was very hard to figure, like reality. You're going to be hard-pressed not to find a Pokemon that's not a legendary that could represent reality. Not saying it's impossible, but out of the near 900 we have right now, I could only think of one that kind of represented it to a decent degree. But we're not quite there at the moment. Right now we're on power. Power, it's raw power. You need a Pokemon that's got straight raw power and destructive capabilities. But furthermore, we need a Pokemon that does represent Thanos', and we are talking about comic Thanos, by the way. That's why I'm using this picture. Thanos' obsession with Lady Death for the longest time in comics. He was in love with the physical embodiment of death. Now, there is a death Pokemon. It's not known as the death Pokemon, but if you have a Pokemon in X and Y that's life Pokemon, you should theoretically have the death Pokemon. Now, this is a Pokemon of destruction, technically, Yveltal, but let's be honest, it is the Pokemon of death. I'll admit too, when we first saw X and Y, I did want X more than I wanted Y. But as time has gone on, I've really come to actually like Yveltal more than Xerneas in design concept. It's a death bird. It really is, and it actually is really cool looking in my opinion. I really do like Yveltal quite a bit actually. But Yveltal is basically the Pokemon equivalent of Death. It's the Destroyer Pokemon. Actually, what is its legitimate title? Now that I say that out loud. Yveltal. Let's see here. What is its Pokemon description? Yveltal. Yep, the category, the Destruction Pokemon. It's the Destroyer Pokemon. Which I don't know if I did a Beerus team yet, but he'd be on Beerus's team, obviously. But the fact of the matter is, it is the Death Pokemon, whereas Xerneas is the Life Pokemon. Xerneas is the Death Pokemon, and by that logic, it is the perfect representation. But beyond that, it's a powerhouse of a Pokemon because it is still a legendary. Its base stat total is still 680, if I'm not mistaken. Most legendaries tend to hover in the 680 range, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that's the base stat total for these guys. Yep, 680. That's the general stat total for legendaries. And yeah, all legendaries are legendary for a reason. Even pseudo legendaries do not come anywhere near close, and their base power level is around 600. So they are extremely powerful. So in between the two, it was definitely the more raw power type Pokemon than Xerneas, which was a fairy type. So Yveltal for me is both the Power Stone and his representation of death. So let's move on to something a bit more abstract, more spiritual. The Soul Stone. Now, the Soul Stone was actually an easy concept for me to get in terms of what type of Pokemon I need, but not as easy to find the Pokemon, because there isn't a legendary that is a really good representation of the Soul Stone. There isn't a Pokemon that steals a legendary that really steals souls, traps souls, spirits kids away, whatever. But there are plenty of ghost types that have that in there. And ultimately, it came down to, Dusknoir. Dusknoir is basically, I thought, the better representation than something like, say, Shedinja, for example, which I believe they say steals life force from individuals who look in his back. However, Dusknoir, on the other hand, with its Pokedex entry, to be precise, its Pokedex entry states that it's said to take lost spirits into its pliated body and guide them home. It's an attempt to catch railroads from the spirit world. Commanded to take people there. So basically, it's a Pokemon that actually steals people and Pokemon away. No one knows whether it has a will of its own. But the soul is the only thing eaten. It eats souls. It transports souls. It's basically a Pokemon that is a living container for souls, really. And I feel that was a really good option. Add on the fact that it does represent also that Thanos has died several times before and has come back. So I felt that was the good alternative to Soul Stone versus something like, say, I could have gone Duskull, but that wouldn't have been good. Shedinja was an idea, but I didn't really like Shedinja either. So yeah, ultimately I went with Dusknoir, and I felt that was actually a pretty good option. With time, there were only two options. That's it. There was only two options to go when it comes to the Time Stone, and that was Celebi or Dialga. Dialga? I think it's Dial and Gus, or I'm gonna say Dialga, which my preferred of the two between Palkia and him. And ultimately, I'm like, okay, Celebi can travel through time, but Dialga is literally the Pokemon of time. So Dialga, it's the Time Stone. It literally has it's a diamond, mind you, but it literally has a gemstone in its body. You could easily find there's a variant of this that has a green one to represent the Time Stone in the MCU, or an orange one to represent in the comics. Although all of the stones look different depending on the universe, so I'm sure there's a version of the Time Stone that is blue. So there you go. But yes, Dialga is the Time Stone. I think that's pretty much it. You can't really say anything else about that. For the Space Stone, this was another one that I felt was actually pretty easy to pinpoint, because with Space Stone, you have to think of a Pokemon that's going to be either opening spatial rifts or is manipulating space on some level. And the Pokemon that's been showing up more and more in terms of these videos, that is Hoopa. I would go more Hoopa Unbound, because Hoopa, as his standard form, is just mischievous. He's just a little prankster, whereas unbound form is a much more threatening force in terms of what it's capable of doing. I also went with this picture, not the other picture I normally use, because frankly, I just like this picture better. It's a cooler picture in my mind. And you can see his little shiny form down there too. So yeah, to me, it's Hoopa Unbound to be the Space Stone. But now we're getting into the final two: the mind and the mind and the Reality Stone. Now, the Mind Stone again was actually a pretty easy one. I needed a Psychic type. That was a given. When you're telling about mental abilities, the Mind Stone being the Mind Stone, you need a Psychic type Pokemon. And there's another purple guy I had on standby thanks to the Frieza video, Mewtwo. Not only is he such a raw powerhouse, he's one of the strongest legendaries there is. He's one of the only legendaries to get a Mega Evolution. The only other ones I remember, if we're including mythicals, is Diancie has a Mega Evolution, Rayquaza has a Mega Evolution, and Groudon and Kyogre have Primal Reversion forms, which are essentially Mega Evolution. I don't believe there's another Mega Evolution Pokemon besides that. And he gets two of them, too, which represent, honestly, the fact that, A, Thanos is also very powerful mental manipulation in his own right, but B, is also just a very dangerous opponent hand-to-hand. Add on to the fact that Mewtwo is arguably the strongest Psychic type there is, and you have it in Pokemon that is a good representation of the Mind Stone. And he's purple. That is just an added bonus. So now we get to the final one, and this is the hardest one. This was the hardest one to pick, because I'm like, okay, there is pretty much no good representation of the Reality Stone in Pokemon. And I stand by that. There is no good representation of the Reality Stone in Pokemon. That said, however, I do feel that there was at least a option. You could argue anything that's maybe psychic could have reality warping powers. Ghost or Fairy, to some degree, have reality warping powers. Giratina, when it comes out of the distortion world, is already distorting gravity. That's something, but that's not enough. And that's a fundamental force. That would be considered power. So I'm like, okay, that can't work. Ultimately, I had to think outside of it, because I'm like, okay, I'm trying to represent some of the other facets of Thanos that I can. And there is one other facet of Thanos where Thanos has become, on multiple occasions, a legitimate god. And there's only one legitimate god in Pokemon, at least to date. And that is Arceus, or Arceus, depending on the pronunciation of the term. I don't know if it's ever been said how it's pronounced. Is it Arceus or Arceus? I think it's Arceus because of Type Nulls and Silvally using the RKS system. I think that's what it's supposed to be, so I think it's Arceus. But Arceus is the god Pokemon. And this can represent, take your pick, any spin-off, one-shot stories where Thanos has become god. There was one involving Kang where he became a living deity, a living god. There's one where he gained the heart of the universe where he became god. He's literally become so powerful, stronger than one above all. He's, on several occasions, become a legitimate deity in the Marvel Universe. You just can never keep that title. Except in the Kang one that I recently saw. But apart from that, also, this is the Pokemon that's said to have shaped creation. And shaped creation, you need to manipulate reality to your whim. And so Arceus, or Arceus, is more than likely the best representation for the Reality Stone, as he has birthed into creation, beings of unimaginable power that are still dwarfed by him. Add on to the fact that he is the god of Pokemon, and that, Thanos is, or has, become a god multiple occasions in the Marvel Universe. I felt Arceus was the best route to go. So, your Infinity Gauntlet Pokemon team is as follows. Yveltal for power and Lady Death. Dusknoir for soul, and for the fact that Thanos has died several times. Dialga for time. Hoopa for space. Mewtwo for mind, and to represent a few of Thanos' physical attributes. And Arceus for reality, and to represent the deity figures that Thanos has become in other Marvel comics. So that ultimately is, in my opinion, the team for the Mad Titan himself, Thanos. But that is just solely my opinion. I am more than willing to hear other opinions on this team or a different team. Let me know in the comments below. But thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. As always, you want us to review something, put in the comments below. Let us know the review at some point. Hit that bell if you want to be notified. I'll be back. I got the what if to do still today, and I've got the um, box office to do later today. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you folks later. Have a good one.